Shabbat Shalom. As if there weren't already enough reasons to love Scarlett Johansson. For those of you who might have been vacationing on Mars past 2 weeks, the actress agreed to endorse an Israeli company called SodaStream that manufactures carbonated water devices, and she filmed a commercial that ran during the Super Bowl. The commercial itself was controversial because the original version was censored by Fox for containing too harsh an attack line on Coke and Pepsi, and it was Pepsi who sponsored the halftime show. But that wasn't the main controversy. What got an assortment of Israel bashers, political correctness preachers, and self-described, self-righteous moralists of all persuasions, what got them completely out of whack is that SodaStream, a publicly traded company on NASDAQ that has 13 production plants throughout Israel and several locations throughout the world, has its main manufacturing plant in Ma'ale Adumim, a large suburb of Jerusalem that is beyond the Green Line in the West Bank. Under any conceivable arrangement that has been discussed, even from the Palestinians' perspective, Ma'ale Adumim will remain within the borders of Israel in a permanent peace accord. It's about 7 miles from the center of Jerusalem. SodaStream promotes a healthier brand than other carbonated beverages. It makes an effort to be ecologically friendly. It employs approximately 1,000 people at the Ma'ale Adumim plant, 500 of whom are Palestinians who receive equal benefits and equal pay. There's a small mosque on the premise, and prayer time does not count as time off. And Scarlett Johansson herself is an A-League star, not only in Hollywood, but in the charitable world. She was a global ambassador of Oxfam, the British-based international charity that says it's devoted to fighting poverty. And she is a vocal supporter of all of the classic liberal causes that one would expect, giving of her time and talent, fame, and fortune to humanitarian causes. But Oxfam led an all-out assault against their global goodwill ambassador. Everything about her was perfect until she agreed to promote SodaStream. And then Oxfam wagged its big moral finger towards ScarJo. Since SodaStream has a plant in the West Bank and Oxfam opposes trade with Israeli settlements in the West Bank, Scarlett Johansson should reconsider her relationship with SodaStream if she knows what's good for her. And in a rather stunning turn of events, instead of issuing a mea culpa, as one might have expected, instead of begging Oxfam for forgiveness, as one might have expected, instead of apologizing for her transgression, as one might have expected, Scarlett Johansson turned the tables and severed her relationship with Oxfam, citing fundamental difference of opinion in regards to the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. In effect, this Scarlett said to Oxfam, frankly, I don't give a damn. What a relief. What an inspiration. If anyone here has a connection with Ms. Johansson or knows how to reach her, tell her that I love her and admire her and that the Jewish community thanks her. I want to make 3 points. 1, Scarlett Johansson has given a clinic on how to stand up to bullies. The world is filled with moral menaces. They preach love but are full of hate. They project humility but are full of arrogance. They are consumed with passionate intensity but for the wrong things. They say they are for peace, but their actions promote war. They prostitute words and pervert values. They tell us that they are humanitarians. Roger Waters, the legendary Pink Floyd rocker and my one-time musical hero, not going to tell you what I have on my iPod, but he's on it till next week. Savage Johansson, for giving him the wrong impression that she believed in truth, human rights, and the law of love. They are comfortably numb to truth, human rights, and the law of love. They possess an immoral certainty, a lifelong practice of self-righteous moral piety stands between them and truth, human rights, and the law of love. Under the guise of tolerance and humaneness, many of them are really the most intolerant of people. Under the guise of liberalism, many of them are really the most illiberal preachers of a fundamentalist philosophy. And Scarlett Johansson showed the proper response to these folks. If we could contact her, and if she would agree, I would urge our Board of Trustees to restore the Stephen Wise International Humanitarian Award and give it to her for demonstrating real courage and true humanitarianism. Someone in the Jewish community should recognize her. 2, boycotts of Israel are absurd. The founder of the BDS movement boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, Omar Barghouti, makes no attempt to hide the true objective: the right of Palestinian refugees to return to the homes and lands from which they were displaced and dispossessed in 1948. Leave aside that the Palestinians are the only group in the world whose refugee status is transmitted automatically to subsequent generations. That the grandchild of a Palestinian refugee, who might be an accomplished and wealthy citizen in any country of the world, can nonetheless be considered a refugee by the United Nations. Under that definition, I'm a refugee too, from Europe. Leave aside that the reason many of them became refugees in the first place was that the Palestinian Arabs joined surrounding Arab states that launched a war of extermination against the infant state of Israel in 1948 and lost. Leave aside that Israel came into possession of the West Bank in the first place because of a war of extermination of 3 Arab states launched against Israel in 1967, and they lost. Leave aside that the PLO launched a vicious war against Israeli civilians in the heart of Israel that killed 1,000 and maimed 10,000 and lost. And as a result of that, the security barrier and other security measures were implemented. Leave aside that every day, every single day, Palestinians try to inflict terror on Israel, and that the reason they don't succeed is Israeli security measures. Leave aside that they launched this war after rejecting President Clinton's Camp David proposals accepted by Israel, and that they have rejected 2 additional peace proposals, primarily because they refused to sign an end-of-conflict agreement that would settle all outstanding claims against Israel once and for all. Leave aside that Omar Barghouti himself is a graduate of Tel Aviv University, and the university resisted a worldwide petition to expel him, upholding the values of free thought and free speech, awarding him a master's degree in the philosophy of ethics of all things. Leave all that aside. The return of millions of Palestinians to Israel is code for ending the state of Israel. It is a plan to flood Israel with millions of Palestinians who will end the Zionist project. It is anti-Israel venom wrapped in the honey of human rights rhetoric. Those who support boycotting Israel are often blinded by hatred. They single out Israel as the world's worst oppressor. They do it so that actors, musicians, cultural figures, scientists, corporate and political leaders will delegitimize Israel in the eyes of the world. And I must say, they're having their day. Something we should be concerned about. And the state of Israel should be concerned about it as well. Of course, there needs to be peace. Of course, it can only be based on a two-state solution. And it is true that there are injustices perpetrated by Israel, and there are Israeli extremists as well. No country in the world is perfect. Israel is not. No country in the world should be immune from criticism. Israel should not. But remember, no country in the world is threatened by destruction by its neighbors who consider its very existence to be illegitimate. And remember, 100 miles from SodaStream, there are millions of Syrian Arab Muslim refugees. Over 100,000 dead Syrians. If you were a Syrian, where do you think you would rather be? In Aleppo or Ma'ale Adumim? If you were a Palestinian, where do you think you would rather be? In Damascus or Ramallah? Cairo or East Jerusalem? Riyadh or Ra'anana? If you are a humanitarian worker, where would you advise Palestinians to reside? Homs? Cairo? Tehran? Mecca? Or Bethlehem? Again, it doesn't mean that there are no injustices. It doesn't mean that Palestinians don't deserve better. It doesn't mean that Israel cannot do more. But where's the context? Where is the proportionality? The Middle East is burning with the fires of anti-Western, anti-democratic, anti-humanitarian savagery, torture, and anarchy, and SodaStream is the focus of all evil in the world. And we should boycott and weaken Israel? Israel? The essential bulwark on the front lines combating anti-Western extremism that in many ways protects Europe and the United States from violence and terror? Israel? The only reliable ally left in that part of the world? As the former Prime Minister of Spain, Jose Maria Aznar, pointed out, Israel, whose technology protects the Eiffel Tower, the Vatican, and Buckingham Palace. Israel, whose drones protect European, American, and NATO troops in Afghanistan. Israel, whose intelligence capacities protects European cities. Israel, whose newly discovered natural gas depots buffers Europe from problematic suppliers in Russia and the Persian Gulf. How wonderful it is to sit in London and to boycott Israel. Oh, what feelings of self-satisfaction and high principle. The hypocrisy of luxury, with no need to think about Palestinian wrongs or Palestinian incitement. Things might look a little different from Sderot, but never mind. There are no good Israelis, and there are no legitimate Israeli concerns. So what do I care if Israeli school children cannot go to school because they're fired upon indiscriminately by Palestinian terrorists? It's their own fault. Israel was born in original sin, and therefore, by definition, is sinful in every way and is the problem of every problem. 3, partial boycotts don't work either. It's what Oxfam claimed. We're not in favor of boycotting Israel, only Israeli products that have even the smallest connection to the West Bank. Scarlett Johansson herself pointed out the hypocrisy of this position. She didn't distinguish between partial boycotts and the BDS movement. She called it for what it is. A partial boycott is a boycott. Now, one can understand why Jews are a bit sensitive to Europeans boycotting Israeli products. One can understand why efforts to distinguish between partial boycotts and complete boycotts are often completely lost on the Jews. Like the sound waves emanating from Roger Waters' bass guitar, we feel their vibrations even before hearing the chorus. I do realize that it is intellectually possible to be pro-Israel and even a Zionist and still not want to support businesses in the West Bank. And whatever anyone wants to do on their own, bless them. If you don't want to buy SodaStream products because one of its plants is in the West Bank, that's your prerogative. But Scarlett Johansson was right. To speak and advocate for a partial boycott is to speak the language of boycott. It is to place yourself with those who call for boycotting all of Israel. It is to give aid and comfort to Israel's enemies. It is to legitimate the delegitimators. It also takes Palestinians off the hook, as if they are merely potted plants and are not independent actors who could end this struggle quickly if they really wanted to. They're not hapless victims. Partial boycotts are also unworkable in practice and hopelessly naive. It's impossible to limit a partial boycott only to products beyond the green line. Many of those who advocate partial boycotts know this, but feel more secure behind the balm of partial boycotts. They feel that in some way it inoculates them from the more extreme BDS position. And it often undermines the goal of peace, compromise, and coexistence, the very thing that the partial boycotters say they want. SodaStream is a perfect example. The Palestinian workers themselves do not want SodaStream boycotted. What is Oxfam's solution? To close down the factory? To send 500 well-paid Palestinian workers into unemployment and poverty? This furthers the aim of Oxfam to fight poverty worldwide and to help the poor get back on their feet? How exactly? How? These 500 Palestinian workers feed 5,000 Palestinian dependents. If SodaStream were to pick up and relocate, something they could probably do rather easily, this would further the interests of Palestinian workers and promote coexistence and peace better. Liberal Jews should not support boycotters. Our place is not with them. Liberal Jews should not legitimate the delegitimizers. Our place is not with them. Liberal Jews should continue to advocate and support a two-state solution. Liberal Jews should continue to promote coexistence. Liberal Jews should continue to support those in Israeli society who believe in territorial compromise and continue to urge them to make the necessary compromises for peace. Liberal Jews should continue to support those in the Palestinian community who believe in territorial compromise and continue to urge them to make the necessary compromises for peace. Liberal Jews can feel perfectly comfortable buying SodaStream products, whose stock surged 10% yesterday. Oh, and one more thing. You might want to think twice about the next contribution to Oxfam.